Good day, everyone, and such a warm welcome to you all. It is an honor and a pleasure to be your host for this podcast live, meaning a warm welcome to everyone to interact today throughout our session with our very special guest, whom I will be introducing to you shortly. And it sounds from our pre-dialogue survey and RSVP sign up that many of you may not have heard about the Institute of HeartMath. And some of you, of course, have, and some of you are actively practicing coherence practices from the Institute of HeartMath. So I thought it might be really interesting for us to start out as we begin our session today, before I introduce Debbie, for us to try coherence practice together. So let me just pull up that screen, and I'm just curious how many of you may have heard of the quick coherence technique. Just put a thumbs up in or a yes in the chat. For those of you that are familiar with this quick coherence technique. And of course, this is an invitation and not a directive, but we thought it would be fun to do a 2-minute practice with you all before we start our conversation today. And I'm going to take my headphones out. So this is one of the most elemental and basic heart coherence techniques that our very special guest, Deborah Rozman, leads us in. So again, it's an invitation to those of you who might like to join in and follow along. And certainly we'll get started with our dialogue with Debbie in just a moment. So here we go.
Technique that you can use to connect more deeply with your own heart and to connect more with the hearts of others. Let's try it together. First step is to focus your attention on the area of your heart. To shift your focus to the area of your chest or heart and pretend like your breath is flowing in through the area of the heart or chest and out through the area of the heart. Breathe a little more slowly, a little more deeply than you normally do, maybe to a count of 5 in and 5 out, but find a smooth, easy rhythm. Let's do it. Now continue this heart-focused breathing and make a sincere attempt to re-experience a positive or regenerative feeling, like the care or appreciation you have for someone or something in your life. It could be a pet, a time in nature, a special place, an accomplishment, but feel that genuine feeling of love you have for someone, or care or appreciation. Or just focus on a feeling of calm and ease as you continue the heart-focused breathing. Now, this technique, quick coherence, is putting your heart rhythms into a more coherent mode, a coherent rhythm, and it has a carryover effect. So as you move into your next activities or connect with someone, you can feel more heart connected, more centered. You can do this simple 1-minute technique anytime, anywhere.
I'm Dude, and this is BB. Save Hot.
Excuse me. That is one of the most wonderful videos that I myself in restorative justice trainings offer for us to just kind of come together as we open up into something that is agenda driven, or where we're making important decisions, or even for myself and others as facilitators of restorative justice practices. So I'm delighted to see the beautiful Deborah Rozman with us in the room. Yay. And thank you so much for being with us. If I may just introduce you to our wonderful live group. And of course, this will be dropped on our iTunes podcast, Restorative Justice on the Rise, which has been in motion since 2011, if you can believe that. It was one of the first, if not the first, restorative justice focused podcasts in our world, as far as we know. And that comes from people who have been active in the field for decades who made that observation. So I'd love to be proved wrong, because I think media has such a key ingredient and generative force around spreading the word and connecting people. And that is exactly the mission and purpose of Restorative Justice on the Rise. And I have to say, it's been a dream of mine to bring Debbie in with us for a long time. I had the honor and pleasure of working at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, where I first became familiar in the early 2000s of the Institute of HeartMath. And I would love to just share a little bit more specifically about Debbie. And then we're going to ask Debbie to chime in a little bit about her raison d'etre, of diving into the amazing work that she's dedicated her life to. So if you hadn't already seen her bio, just give you some samples of this amazing person that we get to hear from today. Deborah Rozman, PhD, is president and co-CEO with HeartMath founder and chairman Doc Childra of HeartMath Inc. And Deborah is a behavioral psychologist, and since 1991, she has helped lead HeartMath's mission to facilitate a more resilient and heart-based world. HeartMath's programs provide scientifically validated coherence techniques for emotional self-regulation and internal energy management to improve health and well-being, build resilience, and enhance intuition and innovation. HeartMath developed award-winning EM Wave and Inner Balance HRV coherence feedback technologies, which I've seen used in schools quite often and highly recommend them. They're very easy to download too. So she's been involved for many decades in helping people increase heart-brain coherence for more effective decision-making, optimal performance, team building, and leadership. And I'd also like to mention that she co-authored with Doc Childra the Transforming book series, which includes 4 titles: Transforming Stress, Transforming Anger, Transforming Anxiety, and Transforming Depression. She also co-authored Heart Intelligence, Connecting with the Heart's Intuitive Guidance for Effective Choices and Solutions. She's worked with Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, Dr. Daniel Amen, and many others. She's a scientific advisory for the board of the Global Coherence Initiative, which is an extraordinary effort. And I hope we get a chance to talk a bit about that today. So without further ado, though, I know we don't have a whole lot of time today together to hear the nuggets that you're going to share with us, Debbie, but just such a warm welcome to you. It's so great to have you here.
Well, thank you so much, Molly. I so appreciate your warm heart and your following HeartMath all these years and our combined common mission to just activate and awaken more heart on this planet and what the heart really is, instead of people just thinking it's either a blood pump or something philosophical or religious. It's not. It's the key to our future.
That is such a beautiful way to open up. I'd love to hear more, and I bet people are wondering what the heart, as like I've heard the term that the heart is its own brain. So, but let's talk first, if we might, about a little bit about your journey and your inspiration that brought you into HeartMath. What was there a special moment in your life where you were just like, wow, this needs to be brought forward? Because I mean, what you've done is extraordinary, and it's cutting edge, and it's leading a new pathway forward for our world.
Yeah. You know, as a behavioral psychologist from a young age, I wanted to help people. I wanted to serve. I wanted to understand what made me tick and others tick. I studied attitude change theory at the University of Chicago, and there was too much math and statistics for me. I wanted to understand people. And that's when I came out to California and did studies at UC Santa Cruz, where Esalen was just starting, and it was the whole exciting era of the late 60s, early 70s. And I knew from my starting meditation practices and all my studies that it's something to do with the heart. And whenever I couldn't find solutions to things, or there had to be something else, I would like really go deep in my heart to try to get answers. And of course, the saying is go to your heart for answers. But it all seemed metaphorical until I met Doc Childrey, the founder of HeartMath, and he was talking about the intelligence of the heart. And I already knew there was an intelligence there, something that we all know, our inner wisdom. All the cultures, ancient cultures talk about that. But he wanted to research it and create a research center to really understand how the heart, brain, nervous system, spirit, how it all worked together. And so I was on board, and we started the HeartMath Institute back in 1991. I knew there was something really important with this, but we spent years just studying and researching with an esteemed scientific advisory board. And what happened was we discovered the connection between the physical heart, the blood pump, and our emotional state. And that critical link can be seen in the rhythms of the heartbeat, called heart rate variability. And that time that was only used for fetal monitoring. So we delved into studying that again with Dr. Donald Singer, who was the founder. He actually coined the term heart rate variability. It was a very exciting time. I'm hoping trying to convey this because it was right on the edge of brain researchers like Carl Prudence saying, what is this heart? And at the same time, in the 1990s, there was a researcher who discovered that the heart has its own intrinsic nervous system. I mean, this is all relatively recent. That's independent from the brain. And they have 40,000 neurons that are sensory neurons that can learn, feel, sense, and remember. And that just exploded into a whole new field called neurocardiology. Now, we took that further, seeing how can people interact with this? Is there some kind of heart biofeedback where you can feel a change and see it in real time on a computer screen if we have you hooked up to a heart rate variability monitor? And yes, and we could see how people could actually change that HRV or that heart rhythm and train to get into this sine wave-like heart rhythm, a coherent wave form in physics. And that would signal to the brain a different response than when we were in an incoherent, scattered heart rhythm, which would trigger signal to the brain through the vagal nerve, a stress response. So we were getting right to the heart of the matter of what creates that stress reactions in ourselves. And that opened up a whole nother field of research and training programs and technology to get coherence feedback to train into coherence. And I knew what we were onto was what the world needs, whether it's for restorative justice or just people getting along with each other or just being able to optimize our own potential. Getting your heart, brain, and body in sync opens up the frontal lobes where we experience compassion and empathy and bigger picture thinking and seeing each other as ourselves and all the things that philosophy and religion say we should do. But unless you can actually power up the physiology to get in that state, it becomes a dream, a philosophy that we aspire to instead of an actuality. So that's my passion. That's what I'm about. Take this to the planet so people can really become who they truly are instead of what we see going on.
Debbie, was this the first time that I can't imagine it would be, but what do you think about the intersection and the integrative aspects between social justice practitioner work, such as restorative justice, where we're doing conflict resolution work and serving our community, and oftentimes in very intense situations?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we work with a lot of social groups. We have a term called social coherence. And if you would get the book Heart Intelligence, there's a whole chapter on that. And that is, how do we get heart connection between people, especially when they're polarized, and especially when there may have been trauma and something unforgiven, or especially when there's just strong opposing belief systems for whatever reason. And what we find is if people can get into heart rhythm coherence on our technology, get themselves in that optimal state, there's a whole different level of communication and connection that opens up without saying you need to be in your heart with each other, now care about each other, because that blocks when people have so much judgment and blame and anger and hate. But if they get into heart rhythm coherence within themselves, get in the green, as we call it on our Inner Balance app, into that sine wave-like state, they hear better. Their ego gets out of the way. They're more intuitive, more receptive, and that automatically sets the stage for social coherence, where our heart rhythm pattern that's coherent shows up in your brain waves and vice versa. So we're more in sync with each other. It's the underpinnings of harmony. That starts a whole different dialogue, whether it's conflict resolution or co-creative thinking. Dr. John Gottman, who's one of the leading relationship scientists in the world, he, up in the Seattle area where he is, the courts somehow call on him for domestic violence dispute resolution. And he gives them each the HeartMath technology, the couple, and has them each get in the green, as we call it. The green code is for coherence before they start talking to each other, and he leads them through coherent communication techniques. And he's published scientific papers on this. It's the only thing, he says, that he's found that can lift people out of their entrenched separation into more clear communication and connection.
Mm, so powerful. You said so much in just that
I
little
know.
nugget there. I want to welcome in those who are just joining us. We're, of course, speaking with the incredible Deborah Rozman of the Institute of HeartMath. There are so many resources and materials on their website, heartmath.org. You can download a full report that is a synopsis of the science behind all of this. So, as Deborah said, this isn't just theoretical. This is actually backed up by very rigorous, very beautiful scientific processes that have been conducted with the Institute. So there's also technology there. I actually have personal experience with the monitor. I think it's incredible because it's very easy to download. It's very easy to run. It's an app that shows you with a little monitor that you put on your finger, I believe, or is it your earlobe?
Your earlobe, this is the
Yeah,
hardware you need to go with it.
yes,
It's the Inner Balance Coherence hardware, but then you download the free app.
yes, and it is just excellent because it really does show you how simple it is to shift your focus to that space, and you literally see the shift. And I've heard from
Right.
teachers in restorative justice work how much they love using these monitors for their students and for themselves as well, because we know restorative justice in our schools is a growing thing, and it's not just for the kids, it's for us as adults as well. So, welcome to those of you who have just joined us. We're going to be doing some interaction with Debbie a little bit later, and I'll welcome you to open up with questions shortly and periodically for the second half of our hour together. But you said something I'd like to come back to about how when we're in coherence, it's clear that we're impacting others.
Right.
Coherence capacity. Can you give us what's the name that describes that, and tell us a little bit more about how that works? And does it require proximity?
Well, that's a good question. The hope for humanity is not transforming one heart at a time, because with 8 billion of us, that'll take forever. The
Right.
hope for humanity is really how, when we're in this heart coherence state, and we can measure that sine wave-like state, and we can see in our research lab that when I'm within 3 feet of you, or touching, but it doesn't have to be touching, within 3 feet, that whatever my HRV pattern is will show up in your brainwave. So think of yourself in a crowded elevator. We are all energetically affecting each other. Now, how is that communicated? The heart produces an electromagnetic field that can be measured 3 to 5 feet from the body and probably goes a lot farther, but that's all we can measure it. The brain's field is you can measure from about a half an inch. And so think of this heart's field like a cell phone or a radio transmitter. And that's how we communicate, is through a field, through the electromagnetic field and waves. So when we're feeling love and care and compassion and the heart qualities, and it creates that sine wave, that waveform is broadcast through the field. When we're feeling anger, frustration, stress, blame, all that creates a very incoherent, jagged HRV rhythm, which is about how we feel. The more angry, the more jagged. And that is being broadcast through the field and will show up in the brain waves of the people in your elevator, whether they're conscious of it or not. So we are all affecting each other through the stress waves we're putting out by feeling anxiety and anger and frustration, understandable human feelings. But that drains our energy, imbalances our physiology, and throws the brain into fight, flight, fright. That's the way the world is playing out a lot these days. And it doesn't get us anywhere to getting along with each other or harmonizing or even bigger picture thinking, which you need your higher brain centers activated to see a bigger picture. So when you are in personal coherence and that higher brain is activated, you're putting that energy out into the field. Electromagnetic fields are real. It's not an aura. So then look at the planetary field. There's a huge electromagnetic field in the planet. So when we're talking as we are now in Zoom, and we all did that heart-based technique, and we're putting heart out, we can feel each other's hearts. We can feel tuned in, even though we're probably, some of us, thousands of miles away. It's traveling on our sound waves. It's traveling through the field. We're tuning it like a radio dial into each other. So there's that energetic field effect. If we can do that on a global level, which is what our Global Coherence Initiative is about, get people into the heart rhythm coherence, and we've done research on this across the planet, it lifts everyone participating. It lifts us like we're in a giant cathedral of heart. And we put that energy out. It couples with the Earth's own rhythms, which is part of the research we've done, which amplifies it. So the harmony of nature and Earth can be harnessed through the heart to amplify a global planetary shift. And that is the potential. And that is something that is not just HeartMath saying it, that is physics. And that's the possibility as we individually take responsibility, because it comes back down to individual responsibility for our emotions, our heart rhythms, our inner coherence or incoherence. And it starts there. But as more of us do that, then we can solve our problems, personal, social, and global.
The Global Coherence Initiative is such a powerful thing that I'm curious if you might tell us a little bit more. I know, I'm pretty sure you've been doing work with Lynn McTaggart.
Yeah.
And others on the impact that we can and do have, like you described, even at a distance, with certain elements involved that are very specific, like the intention experiment, and with, as you were describing, the interconnection that we have between personal and global coherence. So how did HeartMath get involved? And you were the founder of this initiative, correct? And
Well, HeartMath is that is a HeartMath Institute initiative. And back in 2008, we started scientific research on the field, the Earth, the energetic field. And we created a global coherence monitoring system to measure changes in the Earth's fields from solar flares and all that, and how that impacted the human heart rhythms. And that's how that started, was that research, because we intuitively knew we were all interconnected. So how can we create a movement where hearts connect and we lift global consciousness? So that was the hypothesis. And we had researchers looking into this. Lynn took it off into intention experiments, and she's on the advisory board, but she's had her own specific unfoldment with it, which was fantastic. And we found that when we had people hooked up to like 24-hour Holter recorders measuring their heart rate variability for 24 hours, and they did that for months, and 100 people in different locations throughout the planet, near where we had these magnetometers that would sense changes in the Earth's field and see what the correlations were as people did heart-based meditations that we call heart lock-ins at the same time. We found, as that data from our sensors came back to a central computer, that people's heart rhythms were synchronizing across the planet. Not only were they synchronizing with each other, they were synchronizing to a slow wave rhythm in the Earth's field. Not only was that happening, but there was a carryover effect that lasted for a couple of days from that. And we went, holy cow, this is nature's way of saying how we can shift into a planet of love, even though it looks like it's falling apart. Understanding that it's happening at probably a quantum level because it's non-local. And at the same time, we took that research to the next level and began to look more at how people could affect the field and how the field's affecting people, because we're all connected. And we started having annual Global Coherence Initiative events. We did them in Mexico for every year until it was COVID, and giving the latest research and latest techniques. This year in May is the first year we're going back to live and also virtual hybrid, an event called Love Unleashed, the heart momentum on the planet, and giving the latest research and the techniques. And we're doing that right here in Santa Cruz, where we are, Santa Cruz County. Lynn is a speaker, but she'll be virtual. Jack Canfield's a speaker talking about love on the planet. Greg Braden is speaking, as well as our scientists. So I would like to invite everybody, go to heartmath.org, and you'll see it advertised there if you want to join in person or virtual. But again, you learn some basic techniques. Now, we also have a new HeartMath app that you can download for free, which has a lot of HeartMath training for stress relief, for brain fitness, for sleep, improving sleep, things we've had validated outcomes that you can use and test for yourself. There's a 7-day free trial, then there's a subscription. So our goal right now is partnering and co-creating with other wonderful initiatives to help lift the planetary vibration, understanding the field effect, and getting a heart movement, getting heart to go viral on this planet, whether it's through kindness, compassion, forgiveness, all these qualities of the heart that when we feel them, put our heart rhythms into that coherent state.
Thank you so much. One of the deeper elements of restorative practice work as it concerns responding to harm and conflict, Deborah, is the idea that we're moving towards an apology or forgiveness. However, restorative justice is not about forgiveness or even about apology per se, requiring those things. Rather, as my friend and colleague Dominic Barter of Restorative Circles would say, it's about cultivating the conditions for the potential of those elements to arise from within the people that we are serving. And I am completely convinced that the more we can show up as facilitators, as keepers in a state of heart brain coherence, um, even if we're not saying something, we're impacting the dialogic field.
You're changing the field, you know, because as soon as you're in heart brain coherence, these qualities of the heart, the open heart, that's what that starts, are natural. It's who we all are. It's in our DNA. Compassion is natural. Empathy is natural. Love and care and kindness are natural. But what happens is you see them in children naturally. They're not managed. Their emotions are all over the place, but they're natural states that get closed off through socialization, through family, through schools. The separation gets imprinted, whereas we're not separate.
Mhm.
We are all connected in consciousness, and coherence is what connects us.
And I love that so much because there's also a lot of reverence in the field for our global indigenous, in
Mm.
restorative practices. We know that, this is not new to our world, and that our indigenous guides from all over the globe have had that wisdom in very unique and beautiful ways, including the Haudenosaunee peoples who knew just exactly what you're saying, that when we bring our minds together as one, is how I believe the Thanksgiving address begins, really. We become better attenuated to face difficulties and situations that are sometimes even, the risk of warring tribes, of high conflicts. And when I think of restorative justice, in this moment, our field is very concerned about trauma informed practices.
Yes.
And, there's, of course, a variance of how we can go about actually being trauma informed and of course appropriate for the people that are involved. But I'm curious, how can those of us who are here today, myself included, be better trauma informed without, like, for example, asking a student who might not be ready for a heart coherence practice, how can we use this in its optimal form for the people that we serve with that in mind? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
We actually have a course we just brought out last year called the Resilient Heart Trauma Sensitive Training. And it's led by Dr. Jarena Elbers, who's a neurologist, who is a HeartMath practitioner. And I would encourage you to take that course because it's not expensive and it's hours of different HeartMath practitioners, health professionals who work with trauma patients, talking about the role of the heart in addressing and interrupting the trauma cycle. One of the things that gets me the most is how much we keep creating new traumas, perpetuating trauma. I mean, it goes on, and it's so unintelligent, but that's what's going on. We're creating a generation now in Ukraine and Gaza and Russia of more trauma. I mean, it's everywhere. And so learning how we can activate the power of the heart to release the imprints of trauma and the addiction to it is really what this program is about. And it's called the Resilient Heart, and it will take you through hours of trauma sensitive training. It's for health professionals, but we've opened it up to anybody who wants to go through. You won't get certified unless you're a health professional, but you'll learn what you can do with yourself, your friends, your family, and in the circles you serve. Because again, it all comes back to the heart. It all comes back to beginning to open the heart. I have one of our HeartMath trainers years ago. He passed away, but he was training in the Los Angeles juvenile prison system. They brought him in because of some research paper. He went through various levels of the prison to get to this 5-year-old boy who was incarcerated because he killed people in his family. And he was so shut down and nobody could reach him. And what he did was able to do was say, is there anything you love? No. Anything you appreciate? No. Did you ever have a pet? Well, my grandmother had a parakeet. How did you feel about the parakeet? That started a whole transformation because he finally felt something that he cared about. And we were able to go in then with our trauma sensitive training and start expanding that and opening that up. And that little boy flourished. He was taken out of that prison within the prison solitary. And, I don't know where he is now. That was many years ago, but that's the key. Finding the chink in the armor that can open the heart, that can start this whole heart brain clearing process.
And it's true that it does clear and rewire us, doesn't it? The more we
That's
practice, it's almost like I've noticed as I practice regularly, even a short little bit regularly seems to create like a standard baseline
Yeah,
coherence
right.
in your beingness and in your
It
presence.
5 minutes a day is using the technology. So you're really there, not imagining or hoping, but you get that coherence feedback and it trains you to
Yeah.
raise your baseline. And when you do that and you see it in real time, it's like, wow, I'm really affecting that. And here's the technique that I can do to make it more smooth. And as you do that, you actually not only feel different, you perform different, you're in the zone, you perceive a whole different view of a lot of the issues that were bothering you.
Absolutely. And we're also able to perceive, I believe, the underlying contexts of the conflicts that we're helping to support. We're able to also, to some degree or another, help those that we're serving once we come together in a full conference voluntarily. At that point, one of the most magical things that can happen often in a restorative justice conference is the illumination of the unseen contexts.
Yeah,
The
that's why we call it
stories.
heart. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
That's why we call it heart intelligence. It's
yeah,
really heart brain synchronized intelligence, but that should be the baseline of what's taught in schools, what people
right. I
start.
couldn't agree more. I
Yeah.
mean, and I'm just excited to link with our Restorative Justice on the Rise community this time with you because it really is a powerful opportunity because we as practitioners have, the capacity to do this at our leisure when with our teams, and it does make a difference. I've felt it and seen it myself. I would love to invite everyone at this point. Time flies when we're having a lot of fun, as we are today, to open up if you would like to ask questions of Deborah. And we'll take some questions, whether you'd like to be on camera or off, or just place one in the chat. I'd really love to include you in the dialogue. So, welcome, Christine. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for sharing the overview of your work. I'm fascinated by the research. I do somatics coaching with people who've been through a lot of trauma and particularly working towards collective coherence. And I'm just wondering if you could point to any good resources for reading up on it. I know I've noted the book, Resilient Heart. I'm wondering if there's anything else you would point to.
Two things. One is if you go to heartmath.org, click on research and see what's there on collective coherence or social coherence, as we call it. Two, our program called Activating the Heart of Teams is all about how to create team building, either in an organizational context or a social cause context, and how to create that psychological safety that is at the baseline of true heart coherence, collective heart coherence, and then how to harness the power of this team for coherent creation, creativity, problem solving, getting in that coherent state, and then doing what we call heart mapping instead of just mind mapping, really drawing on the heart's intuitive collective intelligence. So those are some. the Global Coherence app, which is free to download on the App Store, the Google Play Store, has a area where it's social coherence. You can form a social group and practice coherence together within that group. That's very powerful. And for building team coherence or collective coherence. And then those are the things I would start with, but definitely you can get the sensors. Go to heartmath.com, which is the company that manufactures and sells the sensors, and the new HeartMath app and subscription. Because there's all sorts of training programs right within that people can access on their mobile app. Some groups actually use their mobile phones and do the quick coherence technique together prior to any meeting. We do it as a company. We take the first 3 minutes of every meeting and everyone gets into heart coherence. It cuts meeting times. It cuts the egos out of meetings. It just makes everything more efficient.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for pointing to that again. Thanks for the references. A lot of my work is in Indigenous community, and it always starts with like drumming and a song and a moment of landing. Yeah, totally believe in the work. And there are some other small question kind of popped up, so it's not completely formed in my brain. But are there anything that has come up for you in terms of that like collective and coherence that has been like, I never would have expected that? Like any really delightful surprises in there?
Well, I think the research I started to describe before of the 100 people across the planet who were small groups, or several, I think there were 5 groups that comprise those people. One in Lithuania, one in California, one in New Zealand. That's where we have underground sensors to sense what's happening in the earth. The fact that their heart rhythms all synchronized when they did a heart meditation at the same time, you could say that didn't surprise me on one level, and another level is like, wow, this is real. And this has big implications for planetary coherence and for where we can take this.
Yeah, that's pretty, and thank you for doing the like the research. Yeah, and getting the numbers. Yeah, I think that's all for me. Thanks for all your work. It's really inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you for the great questions and for being with us today live. Really appreciate it.
I have a question.
Yes,
Can
Kurt.
you, this is fascinating to me, and I'm not trained in any science, but I've been following this idea that we're magnetic beings, and I was curious if this type of research is being done in the gut also, because it seems the mind is connected, brain, heart, and gut. Is there any information on that being researched?
Yeah, there sure is. The vagal nerve connects the brain, the heart, the gut. And that's why there's a little oscillating system of gut brain, as well as the heart brain, as well as the big brain. And they're all sensory neurons that have different roles and functions.
Yeah, I was curious because of what I've learned about equine therapy is that horses are empaths, and it seems they use their stomach, the energy from the stomach, to sense what's going on in humans when they're a patient, in equine therapy. So it seems like there's something powerful with the stomach as well in all of this.
It's really interesting. We have so many HeartMath certified veterinarians and equine therapists. And I think you'll find some of that research if you search for horse on the website. But what was fascinating is one of the owners put the clip on her horse's ear of that and put it on herself, another sensor, and got into heart rhythm coherence and sent love, wasn't touching, radiated love to the horse. And the horse, HRV, heart rhythms, went into coherence.
Yeah, I believe it. There's something going on.
Here's what's going on. It's through the field again, but the pathway that we uncovered, it was published in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, is the heart picks up the energetic signal first, sends it to the brain. The brain then sends it to the gut for how the body should respond.
Hmm.
So gut feelings are really tertiary responses. Most people aren't in touch with the initial feeling in the heart or the intuitive prompt, but it is the heart's intuitive guidance that we can train ourselves to tune to those frequencies or whispers or prompts or feelings. And when we do that, we can gain more sensitivity to people, to the room, to intuition, to the proper response that would be good for the whole.
Well, it seems universal. There's just a connection to the whole universe that's electromagnetic. I think there's probably some truth in astrology, but I'm glad to know there's hard research being done. That's very exciting to hear.
Yeah, it starts in the heart. That's what all the
Mhm.
research studies are finding.
Good. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kurt. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Great question. We also had questions come in on our RSVP survey, but just, of course, still inviting other live questions as well. But I'd like to honor for those who had pre-submitted. Thank you for that, everyone. The question that I'd like to start with from that would be, um, how do you find hope in the darkness of relational conflict? I thought that was
Mm,
such a great question because we definitely live in times that are very heavy in many ways.
we
Um,
do. Very stressful. And you look what's happening among teenagers, the epidemic of why bother, no hope, whether it's for climate change, looking at the politics, they don't, or economy, they don't see much future for themselves. That is a standard perception of the stressed brain, stress, anxiety. But that's going to constantly feed back to the body as incoherence. And that's going to, it's like a figure eight, a loop that keeps between heart, brain, body, that keeps degenerating. And so you see huge rates of attempted suicide, hopelessness, loneliness. And to reverse that process, again, it starts in the heart. It's not just trying to convince people in the mind, oh, it's going to get better, or do this and things will change. You need to change perception so people have that own intuitional perception themselves of possibility. And if you can help people just take those feelings of fear and hopelessness into the heart, do some heart focused breathing, get the heart rhythms into a little more coherent state, just even bring calm and ease for a couple minutes, it'll start changing the signal between the heart and brain. It'll start opening, balancing the two hemispheres, opening the frontal lobes and saying, okay, what are some of the things you value now in life or have? What are you appreciate your cat, your dog? I don't care what it is. You just activate some of those feelings that can be repressed of appreciation or kindness or care. All the so-called heart qualities or qualities of spirit activate this new heart-brain cycle. They're not just religious or sweet things to do. They're real physiological activators. So you start that process and then you encourage, where can you take some steps forward in feeling this way or perceiving or creating a new experience for yourself? And that starts to renew hope. That starts to lift the spirit. You have to do it for yourself before you can change your relationship. Everybody wants to change the other, but the other is not going to change. The other has to be dependent upon their own will. But as you change, it makes it easier for others to change. They sense a change. There's more harmony in your energies. And
mhm.
maybe they want to say, what are you doing? What's the difference? Or you find a new way of communicating. But it starts with you getting yourself in sync.
I so love that because it of course ties into what Gandhi shared with us around be the change.
Mm-hmm.
It does start with us, and For those who may be just joining Restorative Justice on the Rise, after all these years we've been podcasting, we did have a wonderful dialogue, speaking of Gandhi, with Arun Gandhi around some of these aspects of what does it really mean to be the change. And I think you're answering that question for us very deeply, from the Institute of HeartMath's 30 years of this mission. Um, it's extraordinary, and I'm curious, in this group today that we have live with us, how many of you that participated in that quick coherence technique felt a shift happen for you after you practiced that simple 2-minute process? Anyone that might like to make a comment, just press the thumbs up or make a comment in the comment box, and of course inviting more live questions as well. Every time that I host a group online, I'm on Zoom a lot for restorative justice webinars and trainings, and we often will open with your practice. And I'll ask how many of you felt a shift, and it's almost 100%, if not 100%,
Right.
consistently. So another question from pre-submitted. This is a little bit more of a challenging question, but it's very real in our field. So thank you in advance, Debbie, for giving it a shot. If you have anything to add about how to incorporate this work with adolescents who have problem sexual behavior and are in a residential treatment program. So in the more complex work that we do, we see sexual assault cases, sexual abuse, even domestic violence at times. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, most children who are sexual abusers were abused themselves. We know that. Not everybody, but there's something cut off in the heart when you are a perpetrator of abuse or violence. And again, the answer to everything is finding that chink in the armor to open the heart. And again, that's where our trauma sensitive program, the Resilient Heart, could really give techniques and tools, and what we found works. And HeartMath Institute has a whole program for educators working in schools, over 1,000 schools, working with educators and psychologists and counselors who work with problem children and who use the technology and the tools. They're the M-Wave Pro, which they like a lot. It's in person. You need a sensor, and the coach or therapist or counselor works with them. There's some games on that, like coherence games. So make the balloon rise. You have to get into coherence to do that. And the kids enjoy that, but as soon as you get them in coherence, then the conversation changes. And that's really what you want. You want to lift the conversation. So how do you do that? Again, I probably sound like a broken record, but the easiest, quickest way is help people get into HRV coherence. It changes how the brain perceives. It changes from within, and they feel empowered. It's them doing it. It's not you. And that changes the conversation and starts opening the door to possibilities. But again, if you go to heartmath.org, click on education, there's a whole newsletter of things that are happening with the kids' testimonials. If you were interested working with teens or younger children, you'll find a lot of resources there.
There are a ton of resources on the HeartMath website. Many of them are complimentary. Many of them might be a slight fee, but I've also noticed that you have wonderful payment plans for your trainings and for a lot of the things that you offer. So I can't speak highly enough of what you have available on the website. That's heartmath.org. There's the 12 HeartMath tools, which is a free PDF that I love to distribute. And again, that in-person and webinar upcoming conference in May, I believe,
Yeah.
is be hosted in Santa Cruz on the
Yeah.
ground.
At
but
the
also-
Chamonix Resort here near the ocean, over a beautiful place. And myself, I'm one of the main speakers, as well as other people, Dr. Roland McCready, our director of research, and the other people I mentioned, Lynn McTaggart, Jack Canfield. There's a woman from San Francisco who works with, who's speaking, Janae Johnson, who works with, I don't know if it's restorative justice, but the whole racial challenges. And she's going to be speaking how the heart and HeartMath can be applied to that and diversity. So yeah, just go to heartmath.org and look up the Love Unleashed program. It's online and it's in person. It's filling up very quickly live. We have a limited number of space, but it's beautiful Santa Cruz. Where we are in Boulder Creek is just in Santa Cruz County, but we're in the mountains, whereas this is taking place by the sea.
Lovely. I'm turning my attention now to thank Nancy for her comment about the opening heart practice. She shares, whenever I focus on my appreciation for another person, my whole being changes from criticism and judgment to being calm and loving. Thank you for that, Nancy. And, I was thinking earlier about one of the Stanford Research Institute studies about intentional blindness. James O'D, our mutual colleague, Debbie, and I have talked a lot about intentional blindness and the aspect of how heart coherence practices can bring us out of that narrow, assumptive, expectation-based state,
Right.
which increases the field of listening, increases our ability to be open to what might be present for someone who's caused harm, more than in a decreased state of deregulation or just not full coherence.
Right.
It's so fascinating. And that intentional blindness, really literally, if you go to YouTube and put in intentional blindness SRI, it will bring up a very powerful video that I'm not going to spoil it for those who haven't seen it, but it's called the basketball passing video. And don't you think it interweaves into this conversation today, as if we need to make any more case for the truth of this, really?
Right. Yeah, it does. And I would call it actually unintentional blindness, because nobody wants to be blind. That basketball video is, again, it's what frequencies are you sensitive to? What are you aware? It's waking up. This whole thing is a process of waking up and activating the heart of ourselves and our families and humanity and our workplaces. That's actually waking up, actually activating more of the brain's potential. And that's the next level of human unfoldment. And all this stress and craziness that's happening in the world, all the fear intensity is actually driving more people to wait a minute, something has to give. And they go to the heart. When there's nowhere else to go, people often take that walk on the beach or in the woods or anywhere. They go to their heart. They're trying to dig in and find something different to perceive. And it's there waiting for them as they begin to just practice, like you said, quick coherence, find something to appreciate, like Nancy said. And all of a sudden, the judgments and the blame that we get so entrenched in, because it's so standard human response, start to release, and we start to feel compassion and connection. That is a standard higher human response, so to speak. It's a dimensional shift going on. The planetary shift is dimensional. And the higher dimension, the potential where humanity is going, is this heart awakening that opens us up to the field and to all sorts of magic, you can call it, but new possibilities. And that's where it's all moving towards, as we each take more responsibility for our emotions, our reactions, our perceptions, and realize we can. It's not something that you can legislate. It's something that people have to discover and uncover if you give them the tools, and have the tools be where they apply it to what matters to them, their pain points, and that opens the door to other things.
Mm. We are, of course, at the top of the next hour, and I'm very sad that we have to honor time sometimes, because this conversation has been so rich. And I know we have other people that might have questions, but on that note, Debbie, is there a best way to reach people at HeartMath that could possibly put some questions in front of you for your consideration after the fact today?
You just send it to info@heartmath.com. I'm
Okay.
on the .com side,
Okay.
even though we're all
.com.
and just say, question for Deborah Rozman, and if it's better if someone else here answer, like a health professional director, I can send it to them.
Okay. Well, on behalf of our global community, Restorative Justice on the Rise, thank you for our live participation today together alongside with you, Debbie, to all of you that have been here, and to those of you listening in on the iTunes or Spotify podcasts. Thank you for being a part of Restorative Justice on the Rise, a global effort to increase connection, to transform our world in wonderful and meaningful ways. Hopefully, this has been inspiring to you today. Pass it along. Share the word about HeartMath. I can't thank HeartMath Institute enough for the 3 decades of very significant work. And of course, to you, Debbie, for being willing to share your time today with us.
Well, thank you, Molly. It's my honor. And I just want to encourage everybody to take a few minutes today to do that quick coherence technique. Just focus on the heart, breathe through the heart, activate some gratitude, something you're grateful or appreciative of, and then listen to your heart for its guidance of your next steps.
Mm,
Take care. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you so very much. And we'll see you next time, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.